Probably going to lower my attendance. Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. Our topic for tonight is Kamala sweeps, but her record follows her. So, what do I mean by Kamala sweeps? Well, what I mean is that in just a few days, she scooped up $250 million in new funding, and she scooped up as well, the delegates that she's going to need for the nomination. She claims already more than the 1,976 delegates. So she's now being declared by the mainstream press as being the presumptive nominee. So we're all supposed to presume that she's going to be the nominee, and there won't be any resistance at the convention. And truth to tell, there are no rumblings of resistance right now. Everybody seems willing to go along with Kamala, even though, as Kyle Kulinski has it, she is the worst candidate to run against Trump, he thought, was Joe Biden. And the second worst candidate, he thought, but to run against Trump, was Kamala. So there it is. So she's the second worst, according to him. Now, of course, she's been getting a boost all over the place. But as I say, her record follows her. So yesterday, I did a little bit on her record that was relevant to foreign policy. So I won't say much more about foreign policy today, but I did point out just yesterday that in the past she's been a major supporter of AIPAC and a major receiver of AIPAC funds, as well. Now, whether some of the $250 million she just raised is coming from AIPAC and related parties, I can't say, of course, because the reports have not yet been made to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Elections Commission. I got Federal Reserve on the brain, because of MMT. So anyway, so no reports, to the Federal Elections Commission about what happened in the last few days. We have to wait for those and see whether AIPAC and its close allies weighed in with a lot of that 150 million that was raised from large donors. So we're just going to have to see about that. Okay, so getting to what we're going to go over tonight, what I want to start with is, looks like we got 11 people already, but only one person has declared, Stephen Wolfbrand. Hello, Steve. Very nice to see you. So, I'm going to start with an old clip from Kamala. The clip that resulted in her withdrawal from the race. And here it is. Okay.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is
What's up, everybody? Alina Habba here. I am doing this for the first time because I
want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence.
Ding.
She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison.
Ding. 2 dings so far, pretty serious ones. From the point of view of a Democratic candidate for the president.
Beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California.
When she said she kept them on beyond their sentences, she means that they fulfilled their sentences, but there's a provision in California law that the Attorney General of the state can keep people on for longer than their sentences to serve the state in case of emergency. So,
and she fought to keep cash bail system in.
No. Okay, she forgot to add the following. She kept them on beyond their sentences in order to work fighting fires in California at a rate of pay of, I believe it's $1 a day or $1 an hour. I mean, either way, it's a tremendous scandal. And many of the people that she held over were also people who were Black. So the basic point is that was one thing she did that made her very unpopular with Blacks around the country. And we have to note that one of the problems with Kamala is that she's not very popular, with respect to Blacks. Joe Biden was far more popular than she was among Blacks in 2020, and Bernie Sanders was far more popular than she was among Blacks. So generally, the Black community across the country did not have good feelings for her then. Okay, maybe their feelings for her have improved over a period of time, but I don't think there's polling to show that.
Place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
Okay, I lost that last little bit while I was commenting, so I'll go back and play it again.
People in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
I still lost it. Let me go back.
California, and she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
So, cash bail system. 4 dings. 4 dings. And now, here comes the attempt, of Kamala to reply to that or to refute that.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud.
Now, what does that mean? Became a national model for the work to be done? I mean, what is there specific about that people could tie into? I mean, it just sounds like a claim, anybody could make.
Out of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling.
The bottom line is,
So the point is, did she try to answer the charges? Did she try to explain why she did those 4 horrible sounding things? And that wasn't the only one. We're about to get to a 5th one, but anyway, we'll go through. We're only 1 minute and 31 seconds into this, by the way. It's only 4 minutes and 8 seconds.
Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Our Democratic Party, unfortunately, is not the party that is of, by, and for the people.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. Okay, that's enough of that. Okay, so that was part of her record. Okay, there's another thing that was part of her record. And here I'm going to share, okay, a conversation. Oh, hang on a second. I would like to share this video on Facebook before I go further. Oh, looks like Facebook didn't pull this video. Isn't that wonderful? They keep on pulling my videos. Whenever I do a video about foreign policy, they take it down for a minute until I appeal the decision. Okay. So there we are. So let me go back here now. So what I'm going to share is actually a little conversation in which my daughter Devora participated. Okay, this was on Twitter. Let me see if I get the right one on Twitter. I don't want to get the wrong one. Oh, where is that? Oh, here it is. I think. Yes. There it is. So you should be seeing the beginning of a Twitter conversation. Aaron Glantz tweeted, "I've gotten a few calls on Kamala Harris. Yes, it's true. In my 2019 book, Homewreckers, I write about how, as Attorney General, as AG, Harris ignored her own staff's recommendation and declined to prosecute Steve Mnuchin's bank after it foreclosed on 35,000 vulnerable families." And my daughter says, "Pop, did you remember this one?" And I said, "Thanks for helping me to recall it, honey." Also, if I recall correctly, Mnuchin immediately followed that decision with a max contribution to Kamala's campaign. Such contributions have lately been adjudged by SCOTUS to be legal, quote, tips, unquote, rather than illegal, quote, bribes, unquote. So I thought, okay, that I ought to put that in there, but I went further since then. I was thinking about that a little further. If she had prosecuted Mnuchin, and if she had been successful in putting him in jail, he wouldn't have been available to be Donald Trump's Secretary, okay, of the Treasury. And perhaps somebody else wouldn't have thought up, okay, the scheme of taking $460 billion from the CARES Act, turning it over to the Federal Reserve to create a money cannon of $4.6 trillion that the large corporations could use to back themselves up when what they wanted to do was to buy up other companies, okay, and also to buy back their own stock during the Affordable Care Act, rather than borrowing money from that fund, okay, in order to do things that would fight against the recession and expand the economy. The $4.6 trillion money cannon served as the way for them to increase the value of their stock that they bought back without their actually having to dip in to the money cannon, the $4.6 trillion. They never even had to use it. It just served as a backup for them and a backup for their stock values. It was a beautiful move, actually, by Mnuchin, if what he wanted to do was to shore up the large companies, to bail them out, at the start of the COVID recession. But what it allowed them to do was to concentrate by driving small businesses out and buying up other small businesses and concentrating the economic system even further towards an oligarchy. That was a key thing. If she had prosecuted Mnuchin, he never would have been there to do that really bright thing. Just saying. Just wanted to bring that up to the fore. Okay, next. So those are negatives from Harris. I don't want everybody to just focus on these negatives, okay, because there are some positives too. So let's go with Tom, vote blue no matter who, Hartman, a lot of whose work I really love. But as far as the vote blue no matter who stuff is concerned, I'm not real fond of that characteristic of the way he thinks. Anyway, he's pursuing that characteristic here, saying, okay, we got a nominee. I'm not going to oppose the nominee. I want everybody to rally around the flag right now. So this piece is called, I better share it. This piece is called, by Tom Hartman, it's called The Prosecutor versus the Felon. And it appeared on July 22nd, 2024. We must unite quickly around our candidate. It was at the Hartman Report, by the way. And her and our party's pick for VP, and hit the ground running by the end of this week. It is now Wednesday of this week, so according to Tom, we have 2 more days to hit the ground running in support. She prosecuted sex predators. Gee, she prosecuted sex predators. Wonderful. Is that worth playing? I don't know. Let me see.
Sick of this. Well, think about this.
Only 52 seconds. Might as well play it. If it'll play for me.
He's a world leader in temper tantrums. She never loses her cool.
Yeah, she never loses her cool. Okay, like in the reply to Tulsi Gabbard, right? She never loses her cool.
She prosecuted sex predators. He is one.
Grab him by the.
She shut down for-profit colleges that swindled Americans. He was a
Sorry about all the buffering.
for-profit college.
At Trump University, we teach success.
Literally. He's owned by the big banks. She's the attorney general who beat the biggest bank in America and forced them to pay homeowners $18 billion.
But the ad, of course, overlooks the fact that she allowed Stephen Mnuchin's bank off the hook, right?
He's tearing us apart. Sure. Bring us together. This is Trump. And in every possible way, this is anti-Trump. So if that's what you're looking for in your next president, there's really
Of course, it's a very nice ad. Okay, so let me go on with this. I guess I broke up for a second or two. I hope not too much. President Biden has let go of his candidacy to focus on being president during this time of major international chaos. He also endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris for the presidential nomination, virtually guaranteeing she'll head up the ticket. There's little chance that the Democratic Party's candidate will be anybody other than Kamala Harris, and she's certainly earned it. Well, now let's see why Tom thinks that she's earned it. President Biden put her in charge of the southern border, and Republican lies aside, illegal crossings are down dramatically, over 54% down, according to CBS News. And violent crime is at lows we haven't seen in decades. It peaked with Trump. She's met with world leaders. Well, I guess I have to say about that. Okay, illegal crossings are down, and that's fine, and that's wonderful. Over 54%, according to CBS News. Was this because of what she did when she was in charge of the southern border, or was it because of other factors, like, for example, the political successes inside of Mexico, of AMLO? Did that have anything to do with it, or was it strictly the efforts and the policies that Harris put into play? We really don't know. Violent crime is at lows we haven't seen, in decades. Is violent crime solely to do with the illegal crossings? Across the border? I'm not sure the connection there. I don't think it's a definite connection. I think Tom Hartman is glossing it. She's met with world leaders and represented America brilliantly during a time when China, Russia, and Iran are moving aggressively against nearby democracies. And here in America, the GOP has embraced naked authoritarianism. Well, the second half of that sentence is fine, Okay, but it has nothing to do with her. As far as the first part of the sentence is concerned, she represented America brilliantly during a time. What did she actually do? What did she actually do? What does that actually mean? Also, the idea that she was doing that when China, Russia, and Iran are moving aggressively against, the nearby democracies. What does that mean? What has China, been moving against? What are the democracies it has been moving against during that time? I don't know who she's referring to or what she's referring to in relation to China moving against democracies. Russia here, I think Tom is referring to Ukraine as a democracy that Russia is moving against. But anybody who studies the Ukraine situation knows Ukraine's not a democracy. It's a fascist dictatorship. We all know that. And as far as Iran, who is Iran moving against? What nearby democracy is it moving against? If he's talking Israel, we damn well know that Israel isn't a democracy. It's an apartheid state that's carrying out a genocide. So, but what did she do anyway, specifically? I mean, he's glossing over it. It's not like the tight arguments he gives on certain other issues. It's campaign gloss. She's helped shepherd through Congress some of the most consequential legislation in our lifetimes to backstop the middle class, fight climate change, and revitalize the American economy. Well, again, I don't know what she did to shepherd it through Congress. There were some good bills that Biden passed. There were many things he failed on. There were many things he caved on. Still, there are some good things that got through when she was working with Biden. We know that. The infrastructure bill has its positive points. It also has its negative and cronyism points, and we could go through those. But I don't have time to go through those here. But the basic point is there was some good domestic things that Biden got through. How much that had to do with Paris, I don't know. I remember that Harris actually represented Biden when Biden said that he respected the parliamentarian, so they were going to take the $15 out of the $15 per hour out of the American Rescue Plan. I didn't see Harris standing up for that, or, objecting to that. She was in a position, the administration was in a position to use the nuclear option to keep that in the bill. But they caved, and Harris was part of the cave going on. She's been beside Biden at most of history's hinge points and honorably elevated her office. I don't know what that means. I really don't. I wish I did, but these are positive things that Tom Hartman is trying to put forward in Harris's favor. And here he says something nobody could say about, for example, Dan Quayle, Dick Cheney, or Mike Pence, with one single exception. Here he has the exception in mind. When Pence stood up to Trump and certified the election. That was a ministerial duty of his, and he performed it in spite of Trump's trying to bully him. And with rioters outside of the House who were threatening to hang him. So that was an act of courage. Very good. But in terms of Dan Quayle and Dick Cheney and Mike Pence, generally they did not elevate the office. Okay, but then again, I don't really know that Harris elevated the office. It seemed to me a lot of the time she was pretty inactive. And Biden did not have a lot of confidence in her. And also it's reported that before he endorsed her this time, that he had questions about it, questions about whether she could really beat Trump. And he hesitated, a little bit. Then he came around to her side. Vice President Harris, going on, has been an outspoken advocate of women's reproductive rights in the face of Republican efforts to turn the clock back to the 1950s. She's been a champion of voting rights, particularly the John Lewis Freedom to Vote Act. She was. And has a solid law and order background as San Francisco District Attorney and California's elected Attorney General. That law and order background had some negatives to it, as was pointed out by Tulsi Gabbard, and by Mr. Glantz, as we just went over. We worked side by side with President Biden. She worked side by side with President Biden to bring our economy back from the worst collapse since the Republican Great Depression, rebuild our infrastructure. I mean, the side by side thing is, that's BS. The vice president generally doesn't work side by side. We don't know the councils that she was in. We don't know anything about what she had to say. We don't know what she supported and what but she opposed. We don't know what kind of credit to actually give her, because we don't know how central she was to the administration. But the general impression, I think, from the news during those 4 years was that she was not very central. Certainly, she was not as central to the Biden administration as Cheney was, but to the Bush administration. Now, of course, Cheney's efforts were terrible. I certainly think they were terrible, and reprehensible. But that doesn't change the fact that he was much more central to the Bush administration than she was to the Biden administration, or than Al Gore was to the Clinton administration. Anyway, going forward. To bring our economy back from the worst collapse since the Republican Great Depression, rebuild our infrastructure, support democracies around the world. I think that last is baloney. Extend Affordable Care Act to millions more Americans. I think that's also baloney. Lower prescription drug prices, pass the first consequential gun safety law in 3 decades, and appoint the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court. What did she have to do with that? Was she really in on that choice at all? Did she know who Ketanji Brown Jackson was? And the two of them brought us out of the worst pandemic since 1918. This is Hartman's gloss. COVID is also now well under control, thanks in no small part to their efforts. Some people have cogently argued that the Biden administration saved hundreds of thousands of deaths, specifically Juan Cole, a writer I greatly respect, but has claimed that, in his arguments. And I really tend to trust, what Juan Cole has to say. But what the record shows is that there were roughly the same number of deaths during the Biden administration as was true during the Trump administration. So, just saying. And she's electable, going on with the article. Imagine a debate between a former sex crimes prosecutor and a man a jury found had raped one woman who's been accused of sexual assault by another 23 women, including one 13 years old. Trump can imagine that, and it terrifies him. He's already talking about changing the terms of the debate, saying yesterday he may refuse to show up if he's carried on, quote, biased, unquote, CBS as planned. Well, I heard some news today that Trump may be agreeing to 2 additional debates, okay, as opposed to 1. I don't know where and when and how, so correct me if I'm wrong, okay, but I'm hearing that. And so there may be 2 additional debates. So if he's terrified, if she terrifies him, he seems to be getting over his terror pretty fast, or to coin a word, his terrification pretty fast. Vice President Kamala Harris has earned both Joe Biden's trust and his endorsement for the President of the United States. I have no idea whether she's earned that stuff at all. I believe she's also earned the support of most American voters, and the party needs to solidify the ticket fast. Oh, Jesus. This is really a vote blue no matter who's saying from Tom. I'm really ashamed of Tom on this. He seems to have abandoned all skepticism. And I love Tom on many, many things, I have to add. There have been only 2 people writing frequently about the use of Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution in order to get around the Supreme Court, Tom and me. And he has a huge audience and I don't. So I'm very grateful to him, okay, for that. And I'm very grateful to lots and lots of columns about the environment, about corruption in the United States, about all these things. He's great. He's wonderful. I love the guy. But this is a disgrace. But anyway, he's trying to be positive. So I thought I'd include it because it includes positive things about Kamala Harris. The GOP attacks have already started. The first Republican hit against this process came from House Speaker Mike Johnson, saying that, okay, the Democratic Party will now revert to, quote, smoke-filled rooms, unquote, to decide a 2024 ticket because the party has, quote, has abandoned democracy, unquote, in favor, okay, of appointment. Yeah, I think there's something to that charge. They abandoned democracy from the start of the primary process. This year, they rigged it visibly and terribly and dishonorably for Joe Biden so he wouldn't have to stand there and defend his position as the incumbent in the primary. Why did they do that? Because they damn well knew he wouldn't be able to debate. They damn well knew he wouldn't be able to convincingly represent himself as not just the past president of the United States and the present president of the United States, but the future president of the United States. They knew he wasn't going to be able to do that, so they rigged the primary process, the essence of democracy in the Democratic Party. They rigged it worse for Joe Biden than they did against Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020. They eliminated all opposition and forced Robert Kennedy to become an independent, forced him out of the party of his ancestors because he had no chance to get through the primary process. That was really reprehensible. But Tom goes on. In fact, America is a, quote, representative democracy, unquote, and has always been. We elect people to represent us and do the work of governing and decision-making on our behalf. Along those lines, the delegates who will be deciding and ratifying the decision of this year's ticket are almost all elected officials representing their constituents, and the few who are party insiders were mostly selected by people who we've elected. He's right about that. But the selection of Biden without a primary, that was terrible and undemocratic. And there's no getting around that. And these words from Tom doesn't get around that. Nobody smokes anymore, at least in public, and the rooms where the decisions will be made are by and large filled with people we put there through elections to act on our behalf, transparently publicly. What large rooms? There have been no large rooms yet, no public rooms, no convention yet. There's no convention yet. There's a president who selected a candidate to be his successor, and that was done by a small elite, and we were not party, the people weren't party to that process of selecting her. And then she called around and got a whole bunch of donors to put in huge amounts of money into her campaign. And her people called around and got lots and lots of other delegates and told them, hey, look, she's raising $150 million right now from very rich people. And a lot of small dollar donations are coming too. And there's a real bandwagon effect. And the train is leaving the station and you don't want to be left behind. And so now it's 4 days later, and the delegates are in her corner. What kind of election is that? It didn't take place in public. It didn't take place in large rooms where the decisions were made, by and large, filled with people we put there through elections, transparently, publicly. The decision's already been made. There's not going to be anybody who's going to contest her at the convention, transparently and publicly. The decision's been made. He says that is democracy. That is not democracy. With regard to President Biden, his decision to step down from the race, this is an historic example of a man putting his country ahead of his ego. Screw that! He should have decided to step down from the race back before the race even started, and he should have opened up the primary. He damn well knew he was failing then. They've been hiding it from us for months and months and months. Everybody knows that now. A lot of the donors were really angry about that. Like George Washington voluntarily stepping down after his second term when no law or amendment required it, and the majority of Americans wanted him to stay on, it shows the patriotism and integrity of the man. BS! George Washington did voluntarily step down. He did, when most Americans wanted him to stay on. But Biden didn't act like that. He had to be pushed out with extreme pressure. He had originally said he was going to be a one-term president. And when it came time to make a decision about whether he was going to run again, he decided to run again in the face of his obvious cognitive failures and inability to continue to make decisions, and in the face of also making terrible decisions, like the war in Ukraine, which has resulted in at least 500,000 Ukrainian soldiers being killed, which has resulted in the depopulation of Ukraine. They started the war with 40 million people. Now they have only 20 million people living there. And, of course, the complicity in genocide in Israel. He was complicit from the start of this year. He knew about all these things, but he still wanted to stay on. He still thought nobody else could run the country as well as he. He didn't put the country ahead of his ego. He put it behind his ego, and he had to be pushed out. And Tom Hartman here is lying. He's got to know that he's lying. I've known or met a lot of politicians, including Joe Biden, and absolute truism is how addictive power can be. I know that. I know it's addictive. George Washington did not bow to the addiction. But Joe Biden did, and that's why we've had this farce of a race in the Democratic Party this year. Just ask the families of the 5 civilians and 3 police officers Donald Trump let die as he gleefully watched on TV the violence that he provoked trying to hang on to his own power. That I agree with. Joe Biden stepping aside is a rarity, an extraordinarily honorable one. This is because he wants to pat Joe Biden on the head. He wants to be nice. He wants us all to be nice. He doesn't want people to tell the truth. And the truth is, we've had a terribly undemocratic process in the Democratic Party this year. because of Joe Biden's ego and his addiction to power. That's the truth. President Biden stepping out of the race will also make it much easier for Democrats to point out Trump's often incoherent rambling obsession with sharks and Hannibal Lecter and advanced age. And, well, that's all true. On a CNN program yesterday, Fareed Zakaria pointed out that the parties had selected their candidates like Democrats must do now from the earliest days of our republic right up to the 1970s. In the last century, it happened at the nominating conventions. Absolutely true. So what? We discarded that system because we knew it wasn't as good as the primary system, that it wasn't as democratic as the primary system. That's why we rejected it. That's why we changed to the primary system, because it was more democratic. Again, what's Fareed Zakaria trying to do? Well, we used to do it that way, so why don't we do it that way again? Screw that. Moving from the, quote, smoke-filled rooms, unquote, to a primary system in the 1970s may have seemed like a more small d democratic option than having elected delegates make the decision. But the reality we all see now is that it was precisely that decision that removed the guardrails of each party's elders and let Democrat Donald Trump strut in and eat the GOP alive. No, what let Donald Trump strut into the Republican Party and eat the GOP alive was the horrible policies of Obama and Hillary Clinton. The neoliberal policies pursued for years and years and years that led to the formation of an oligarchy in this country. And I know you're going to say, well, it wasn't the Democrats who did the Citizens United decision in 2010. Well, friends, I hate to tell you, it was the Republican Supreme Court that did that particular decision. But that decision came down in January of 2010. And the Democrats had the whole year to repeal that particular decision and use the exceptions clause, as Tom Hartman knows very well, to prevent that decision from actually doing any damage. They had a whole year and they did nothing because they were so busy passing the sellout Affordable Care Act. And after that, they were so busy getting ready for the election of 2010, where they got smashed because they did so little when they had total control of the Congress for the previous 2 years. And the Republicans came in and swept them out of the House because they were so pitiful in what they actually did. They could have passed the Medicare for All in March of 2009, and they declined to do it. They declined to do it because they didn't want to overturn the funding stream from Big Pharma and from the health insurance companies. Going forward, hopefully both parties will reconsider the decision to hand the process over to voters without any sort of pre-selection process by the party itself. Both parties need to find and institute a middle ground between, quote, smoke-filled rooms and simple primaries. No, they don't need to find a middle ground. What they need to do is get money out of politics. So the big guys can't just march in with a whole bunch of money and dominate these primaries. And Tom Hartman knows that too. He knows about the role of money in politics. He writes about it all the time. Why is he forgetting about it here? It's not the need for a pre-selection process by the party elders. That in itself is accepting some control by the oligarchy. That's not what we need. We need to get the money out of politics. Anyway, I'm getting way off the track. I'm supposed to be talking about talking about Kamala Harris. I promise I'll get to Kamala Harris quickly now. Okay, I'm going to go by this, but he really got my dander up with this. There are many lessons to be learned from this the year's election. The main one right now, though, is because the RNC failed 3 times to protect America from a dictatorial madman. That job now falls to us. We must unite quickly upon our candidate and her and our party's pick for VP and hit the ground running by the end of this week. I say bologna sausage. There's plenty of time, folks. There is still 4 months. There is plenty of time to get a better pick than Kamala Harris. Why do I say, okay, a better pick? Well, I've gone over some of the main reasons here, but we've got to look at a much more serious article now. That's an article that was just written. Well, I guess I'm going to go over some of your comments first, then I'll get to the next article. So, John Carroll says hello. Gina Stiles says hello. Hi, Gina. Hi, John. Slave labor minus the $1. Yeah, John. Would everyone please hit the like button? Hey, Joe, guests and friends, shared, use that highlight options and like. What's the story with Stephen Mnuchin's bank again? Well, he was basically foreclosing, on homeowners. He was throwing people out of their homes. What Kamala was doing was she was prosecuting a number of banks who were doing that, in California, to try to save the homes, for the homeowners. And she was having some success in that. But with Mnuchin's bank, there was a staff recommendation from her whole staff, a unanimous recommendation from the whole staff, that his bank and he himself should be prosecuted. She made a decision not to prosecute him and not to prosecute his bank. So she let them go on with their foreclosures, on homeowners. And not only that, she accepted a nice tip from he and his wife of $6,600 for her campaign. That's the story, Lana. A lot of people think her border effort was anything but successful. Yes, a lot of people do think that. Anna and Jenk pointed out that Biden set her up to fail with that. They have. Hi, Dee. Are you having a show tonight? Oh, is Dee here? I don't see her. No, I don't see Dee here in the comments. I think she is having a show, though, tonight, at 9 p.m. I'm going to be late for that, obviously. April says, Tom comes off as quite delusional here. Yes, he does. Now, here's another very illuminating article. This article is by Matt Stoller, and it's at, the lever. Will Kamala Harris hold the powerful accountable? I have to share the article. Almost forgot to share it, but almost doesn't count. There we go. Here's Matt. Okay, there's Kamala. Nice photo. This story was originally printed in Matt Stoller's newsletter, Big, where he explores the politics of monopoly power. Let me click here to refresh since there are 2 new comments. In 2010, Kamala Harris went to Google headquarters and gave an hour-long interview with David Drummond, the then chief legal officer that had overseen the YouTube, Android, and DoubleClick acquisitions. I should add here, this is a very balanced article in terms of the positives and negatives, okay, of Kamala Harris when it comes, okay, to regulation. It's about her record in the area of regulation. And obviously it goes back to 2010. The then chief legal officer had overseen the YouTube, Android, and DoubleClick acquisitions. Drummond resigned 10 years later in disgrace over a sex scandal, but back then he was the legal eagle moving Google through its first existential political crisis. The company was being investigated for monopolization, a suit it avoided through connections with Obama and the GOP establishment. Harris, meanwhile, was running for California Attorney General, a race she narrowly won with the support of progressives. So her stop at Google had a different valence than it would today, as it was a campaign stop for an in-state race. Still, she was asked about antitrust, and today she has a very good chance to be president. So her answer is worth considering. Drummond prefaced his question with the statement that Google was not a monopoly and was constantly being challenged by entrepreneurs and garages. Then he asked, quote, "How do you think about enforcing antitrust?" Yeah, big question. Harris' response was noncommittal. Harris said that it's important to let businesses, quote, "develop and grow," unquote, because tech is a, quote, "very significant source of California's economy," unquote. That said, enforcement against bad actors wasn't necessarily anti-business. Quote, "Bad businesses are not good for good businesses," unquote, she added. Oh, what happened there? Oh, here it is. No. Why am I not getting this whole thing? I got this whole thing before. What happened? Uh, okay, this is now behind a paywall. It was not originally behind a paywall. It was quite a lengthy thing when I originally put it up. Let me see what I get now. This is not a paywall. Keep reading for free. Just sign up. Okay, below. Subscribe for free. Okay. Name. EISAI at Comcast.net. Let me put my name in here. Joe Firestone. ISAI at Comcast.net. Okay. Here we go. This is very annoying. It's all very annoying. Anyway, I signed in, so let me see if I get it now. I'm not getting in. There we go. So, maybe I've already subscribed to it. That's why it didn't go away. Okay, let's see what happens. Now check your email. Okay, fine. I'll check my email. It was in my email box. That's where I originally got it. LinkedIn director, email signature pending. Harris scared. Okay, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to get this back. That is to say, that may not be a paywall, but it's still frustrating me. So let me see if I can subscribe for free. I had this all set up before we went live. It's gone away, so maybe I just need to do this. Okay, apply to them all. Maybe that will get me in. Now check your email. Okay, I'll check my email. Oh, here. Looks like I'm getting in. Welcome back. Sign into the lever. Okay. Looks like I got back right now, but what I have to do is get rid of that. And then I have to share the full article again. This one should be the full article. Okay, so there we are. This is really a great article. So, going on, Harris didn't articulate particularly coherent views on antitrust, which is consistent with the broader Democratic Party consensus at the time. Despite Google being in the crosshairs of the Obama-era Federal Trade Commission, antitrust just wasn't widely considered important. The people in the audience asking her questions, all Google employees, certainly didn't have strong views on the problem. Plus, at this public event, Harris wanted to connect to these people not as Google employees, but as California voters. Her message was, I like you, quote, I like you, give me money and votes, unquote. And she achieved her goal. Barack Obama and Bill Clinton both would have had a different answer because both strongly valued consolidated financial power. As Atari Democrats or New Democrats, close with men like Larry Summers and Robert Rubin, Joe Biden too would have had a different response because he resented Silicon Valley executives, but not Harris. She didn't have strong views and sought to put forward the most democratic, normie position possible, which in this case was to not take one, not take a position. With Harris as the next Democratic nominee for president, it's important to ask the question, what would Harris do about corporate power as president? This post isn't about whether Harris will win, whether she should win, or anything else political. You can get that elsewhere. I am purely interested in what she would do about the monopoly power if she becomes president. And as I've looked into her track record, that theme, she's a Democratic normie on policy surrounded by Silicon Valley friendly Obama types, is what I've seen over and over for better, okay, or ill. So that's what this article is about, going over the record. Not beholden to Big Pharma. I first noticed Harris in 2010 and was initially excited about her as a political leader, but as I saw her in action, operating consistent with the Obama administration on big banks, which I'll get to, I quickly soured on her and developed a negative perception of how she operates. When Biden picked her as vice president, I was not happy. And when he won the election, a very well-placed big tech operative told me that Apple, Amazon, Meta, and Google were over the moon because they had their woman in the White House and could tamp down on the enthusiasm to address consolidation. But Harris didn't actually block any Biden actions on big tech or antitrust. Instead, she acted as she had in 2010 as a Democratic normie, going along with the new consensus in the party that big business and private equity is too powerful. And that meant accepting a relatively aggressive regime with antitrust suits against Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, seed companies, and Ticketmaster, as well as a robust attempt to address consolidation more broadly, bans on non-compete agreements, cutting the price of inhalers and EpiPen-style devices, pro-labor organizing policy, attacks on junk fees, modest airline regulation, actions to limit private equity in healthcare, and a White House council to promote competition across government. Indeed, Biden took Trump's promise of populism and actually implemented with Harris by his side. Still, Wall Street is happy about her ascension and thinks she'll break with this framework. Quote, among those expected to aid Harris' bid for the nomination, wrote Semaphor's Liz Hoffman, quote, are Centerview's Blair Efron, Blackstone's Jonathan Gray, Lazard's Peter Orszag, and Ray McGuire, Paul Weiss, Brad Karp, and Evercore's of Roger Altman, all members of the oligarchy in good standing. Oh, I forgot to add the unquote there. These are the core institutional actors who want more mergers and acquisitions. Jeff Sonnenfeld, a Yale management professor who organizes retreats for big business leaders and is hostile to the current antitrust enforcement regime, which, by the way, is the best thing Biden has done since he's gotten into office. It's the one really bright spot in the whole administration. Anyway, said CEOs, quote, are accelerated over this choice. And CNBC's Jim Cramer, who represents a certain consensus on Wall Street, thinks that a President Harris will fire Lena Khan and Jonathan Cantor because Harris is a big fan and booster of big tech. Harris' close advisor, he says, is her brother-in-law, former Obama Justice Department official and current Uber General Counsel Tony West, who is now traveling with her as a candidate. My God. Quote, she's better for the stock market. She likes the mega cap big tech, unquote, Kramer said. Quote again, she's not the enemy of the West Coast. She's from the West Coast, unquote. Kramer said the contest is now between the nativists, quote, nativists of Trump fans and the pro-tech globalist team of Harris and whoever she picks. So where does this vision, she's a globalist. Oh, God. So where does this vision of Harris as a pro-monopolist, globalist come from? Unlike Vance, who is explicit in his anti-monopoly and pro-nationalist vision, Harris is something of a political cipher. Lacking a clear set of articulated views or philosophy, the answer is in her track record and her social network. In fact, Kamala Harris has been an antitrust and white-collar criminal enforcer back when she was the Attorney General of California. And how she operated then has some suggestive breadcrumbs of how she thinks. Take, for instance, healthcare consolidation. There are only a few government places outside of the federal government with the capacity to truly wage independent litigation against powerful, dominant corporations in the California Attorney General's office, with a lot of lawyers on staff as one of them. Most state attorney general offices have a few lawyers, if they are lucky, that do consumer protection and antitrust, let alone other forms of complex financial litigation. California, New York, Texas, and Illinois are some of the few states that can pull the trigger on difficult, complicated stuff. And on healthcare, she did some good, if very normal for Democrat work. In 2012, Harris' office issued subpoenas to large hospital systems in California, which ultimately turned into somewhat successful legal efforts by her successor against hospital giant Sutter Health. She joined the Obama administration to challenge the Anthem Cigna merger and went along with other state enforcers in litigating against product hopping for opioid treatment, Suboxone, as well as pay for delay in pharmaceuticals. Product hopping and pay for delay are terms that describe different techniques where pharmaceutical firms extend their patients unlawfully and thus increase prices of drugs. As a candidate, she endorsed a policy known as March-in rights, which would undercut pharmaceutical patents. That said, it's not obvious what Harris herself did, though at the very least, she did let these cases and investigations go forward. Such a role isn't unusual for a political leader, Xavier Becerra. Her successor as California Attorney General had an equally good track record, but when he became the head of the Health and Human Services, the department that runs because he didn't understand basic details of the systems he oversaw. Basically, Becerra had let the staff run things. Still, the pay for delay stuff means Harris is a Democrat who's not particularly beholden to big pharma and who sees value. Oh, thanks, honey. But Bonnie gave me 2 pills that I must take right now. So, excuse me for that. Still, the pay for delay stuff means Harris is a Democrat who's not particularly beholden to big pharma and who sees value in addressing drug pricing. California Attorney General Office has some real lawyers who have been innovative. At the time, there wasn't a great playbook for taking on farmers sitting around, so trying that stuff is as good as can be expected. Backing down on foreclosure fraud, and yet there's another stand for a policy framework, one that is much more powerful. Well, California Attorney General Harris had her most important test as an executive presiding over a big political economy decision, whether to crack down on the too big to fail banks to crash the economy or whether to allow those banks to continue mass foreclosures. In 2009-2010, the Obama administration decided to put the whole burden of the financial crisis on homeowners. Hey, Obama. But Harris pledged to operate differently, to take on the banks and get something genuinely meaningful for homeowners for a mass legal violation called foreclosure fraud, where large banks had done critical paperwork incorrectly when securitizing the loans of millions of homes and so could not legally engage in mass foreclosures during the crisis. If you want to read the details, read Dave Dayen's Chain of Title. But at the time, I was excited to see someone stand up on this core issue. In 2010, Harris actually talked about it while campaigning at Google headquarters. Only Harris, as a normie Democrat, ended up going along with the Obama framework. She signed a foreclosure fraud settlement with a seemingly big number attached, but one that didn't do very much for homeowners. As a result, a lot of people lost their homes who shouldn't have. That was a tragedy. Then when she was running for president in 2020, she bragged about what she did. Later it came out that her staff had given her memos on how she should have prosecuted One West Bank, which was owned by eventual Trump Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, but she just chose not to. The best that can be said about these choices is none of these decisions are out of line with what most Democratic officials did at the time. There's a small caveat, which is that part of the settlement involved a foreclosure monitor, and Harris elevated law professor Katie Porter to that position. Through superhuman effort, Porter made a small dent in the problem. Yeah, Katie Porter, really wonderful. Fred's and family in big tech. I didn't pay as much attention to her big tech work as Attorney General, but she was close to a whole slew of people in the industry, top executives at Google and Facebook. She was Attorney General when these companies cemented their dominance in America. Harris' office saw Facebook as quote a good actor unquote. She took no actions against big firms, failed to back privacy legislation, and even started a privacy-related, quote, monthly working group that included representatives from Facebook, Google, Instagram, and Kleiner Perkins, that's a venture capital firm, very important. In internal documents, Harris' office referred to the companies as, quote, partners, unquote. Her circle of friends and family suggests a cultural affinity for large tech corporations and the revolving door of Obama, uh, of Obama alums who circled into them. In addition to her brother-in-law, Tony West, her niece worked at Uber, Slack, and Facebook, and her husband was a big law partner, at Venable and DLA Piper with large corporate clients. One of her close informal advisors is former Obama White House official Karen Dunn, who is the lead lawyer for Google against the Biden administration's antitrust case in ad tech, and who helped Jeff Bezos in his testimony to Congress during the big tech investigation. Her other clients include Apple, Uber, and Qualcomm. Don't forget also that Karen Dunn was very, very important, in the Obama effort, to become the president of the United States, and was a very important, attorney, raising very large sums of money for Biden during the 2020 election, and who's been also a very big supporter of the Biden administration for a very long time. But yet another ally is Neera Tanden. I can hardly say the name without actually gagging, who is generally hostile to addressing corporate concentration. You can say she's hostile, yeah, she's all over them for big money for the Center for the American Progress. The Harris campaign is reportedly trying to recruit Obama veteran and former Uber executive David Plouffe to run her campaign. Oh, I'll bet she's after David Plouffe to run her campaign. He was one of the honchos in Obama's great campaign of 2008. He's absolutely brilliant. Along with Axelrod, who was his partner in that campaign. Aside from his work for Uber, Plouffe was in charge of policy for Mark Zuckerberg's foundation. And apparently, Obama's Attorney General Eric Holder is going to be vetting vice presidential candidates. And here, by the way, is that's a picture of Harris with Sheryl Sandberg. Has already made history once, becoming the first Black and South Asian woman to hold her office, and she will do it again in November. She is an accomplished leader, fierce advocate of abortion rights, and the strongest candidate to lead our country forward. That's what Sheryl Sandberg thinks. I was just with Vice President Harris at White House for a screening of that Screams Before Silence, which, by the way, is a documentary that Sandberg made about the alleged atrocities of Hamas after on October 7th, during the attack, on Israel. Of course, lots of what she had in the documentary has been debunked since then. But Harris, of course, supported that. That said, she has on occasion taken the other side. She supported the unionization of Google workers, and as senator, she prominently grilled Mark Zuckerberg 2018 when he testified over privacy and Cambridge Analytica. Vice President Kamala Harris, Mark Zuckerberg's failure to answer several critical questions during his appearance before the Senate today leaves me concerned about how much Facebook values trust and transparency. That was a tweet, by Harris at the time. There's a video of that. I don't have time to play it, of course, here right now. Oops, what did I do now? I did something. I did something I shouldn't have done. Let me get back to where I was. Oh, that only creates the same problem. So let me figure out what I did wrong here. Okay, there we go. I just clicked on that. It was a link. As Vice President, Harris has largely been absent from most policy areas I follow. So I don't know how to think about her views on Biden's economic agenda, but she hasn't been totally absent, tweeting about cutting overdraft fees, rental junk fees, and junk fees. Generally speaking, however, tweets are far less important than what someone says in public. And she has spoken about banning non-compete agreements. So that's very important, that she's evidently in favor of banning non-compete agreements. That said, Harris hasn't talked about antitrust at all, as far as I can tell. And worryingly, where there is live policy at work, she has emphasized the, quote, AI safety, unquote, frame with Commerce Secretary and big tech booster Gina Raimondo, which can be a way to advance pro-consolidation regulatory schemes. All in all, Harris does not seem to be a player in any of the big money areas. Does her track record really matter? One way is to read her as not that different from Biden's pre-presidential track record. As a senator, Biden did whatever the credit card companies wanted. Was in on he was in on he was in on the monopoly-friendly deals, and he was vice president when Obama mishandled the financial crisis. As president, he delegated and ignored most domestic policy. And so some of it went to populists and union people, while most of it went to neoliberals like Janet Yellen, and Neera Tanden, who was, of course, in his White House. The net result of Biden's choices is a mix. Good policy in a few areas and incompetence across a host of them, as well as poor messaging. But Biden always had a tinge of populism. In the 1990s, he went after Stephen Breyer as an elitist in his hearing for the Supreme Court. Biden was a foreign policy guy and never liked the Silicon Valley and Wall Street execs. He always thought they looked down on him. Harris is more corporate friendly by culture and instinct, though at the White House, she didn't go out of her way to help big tech. Whether that's a result of positioning, competence, or ideology, she has not been the boon that Silicon Valley expected. Her role as the head of the border problem is not promising in terms of Harris' ability to execute. So that's in contrast to what Hartman had to say. Though Biden ultimately bears responsibility for his administration, I'm told she's generally a fan of the Service Employees International Union and wants to focus on health care, which is consistent with where a lot of Democrats are. There's also a lot of inertia here. It's not like she can change everything on a dime, even if she wanted. She will inherit Biden's legacy and office holders, and she hasn't done much as vice president to thwart economic policy for good or ill. She also has to run on it. Two scenarios for the future. So how would she be as president? I'll offer a pessimistic and optimistic scenario. The pessimistic scenario is that Jim Cramer is right. And Harris is indeed a corporatist president who fires anti-monopolists in the administration. She'd mostly be uninterested in our areas and would delegate them to advisors who are hostile to our aims, with a nod to factions in Congress and the media who will be noisy if she's too beholden to dominant corporations. I could see things like weak settlements on the Google cases, appointing a corporate-friendly Democrat to the Federal Trade Commission as the fifth commissioner to neuter Lena Khan, or pushing weak privacy legislation that overrides antitrust law. A Harris-appointed attorney general could intervene in antitrust suits, push out Jonathan Ganner entirely, and prioritize a pro-monopoly vision under the guise of national security. There would probably still be the modest support for work in healthcare and traditional consumer protection and labor organizing in certain parts of the economy, which Harris would use to thwart protests by progressives such as Elizabeth Warren. I suspect that pharmacy benefit managers are in trouble regardless, because the momentum there in Congress is too strong, and Harris could be supportive of eliminating non-compete agreements and addressing junk fees, though the people she'd put in charge wouldn't be good at executing on corporate power stuff. If Harris takes the Jim Cramer direction, what is likely to result is anger from the progressives and populists, an expansion of the popular faction against monopoly power, more public organizing, and a turn to the states for help as the federal government weakens its broader response. The optimistic scenario is that Harris is a normie Democrat. There's enough consensus among Democratic policymakers that she continues and expand what Biden has done on market power to avoid annoying certain people in Congress and to build out an alliance with labor unions. In that case, there is an expansion of the anti-monopoly framework, but mostly the anti-monopoly regulators keep doing what they're doing without pushback from the White House. It'll look a lot like what a second Biden term would have been, with the solidifying of the frameworks the new thinkers in antitrust have put in place. If you had to force me to bet, I'd probably be more pessimistic than not on what a President Harris would do. I could be wrong. I was wrong about Pete Buttigieg, who grew and evolved on the job and is now confident in levying penalties against airlines and actually governing. That's the most favorable thing I've ever heard said about what Pete is doing. There's huge risk for Harris if she does actually run away from the populist parts of the Biden administration. The monopolists are trying to argue that antitrust enforcers are hostile to big tech, as if that's the fulcrum of dispute. But the truth is, big tech is a small part of the overall agenda. The idea is to roll back financialization and consolidation far more broadly and allow working people to control the fruits of their labor. That's what voters of every stripe want. As an example, the Federal Trade Commission today just started an investigation on surveillance pricing, the kind of ticky-tacky surge pricing nonsense we're seeing everywhere that people hate, and it was supported by both Republicans and Democrats on the commission. In other words, going after, say, Ticketmaster is popular, as is reining in the corporate profiteering happening throughout the economy in rent, meat, ad tech, seeds, and chemicals, healthcare, and so forth. Trump promised populism, but Biden actually delivered some of it. If Harris abandons the work, with J.D. Vance on the Republican side, anti-monopoly policy will be ceded to the conservatives, who may run as the party of working people and build a durable governing majority for a generation. All that being said, regardless of who is in charge and what they believe, I just don't see wholesale backsliding to an Obama era style of competition regulation. Excuse me. There has been real institutionalization of the work Biden anti-monopolists have done, with new rules on airlines, shipping, junk fees, credit cards, hearing aids, pharmaceuticals, data, and an expectation that antitrust is a real area of law. People have come to expect some action on these questions. It would be hard to just drop the variety of antitrust suits federal enforcers have brought. And most such cases have state attorneys general on board who would continue them regardless. Moreover, if there's backsliding, big business is going to explode with consolidation, various forms of price manipulation, leading to a broad popular cry of, quote, do something, unquote, and anger at feckless political leaders. On a basic level, most Democratic normies hate Ticketmaster. Actually, everyone hates Ticketmaster. Hopefully, Kamala Harris will see the value in that, or will at least understand that anti-monopolism is glue for part of the Democratic coalition. I suspect it would be hard for anyone to not get that populism works, especially for someone who is about to hit the campaign trail and defend the last 3.5 years of policymaking. Then again, she is surrounded by a lot of people who don't think that. So it's hard to know what will win out in the short run: political reality or the desire of a faction of wealthy Democrats to return to the anti-populist time of Obama. In the long term, of course, we know the answer. It's just a question of who governs. That, my friends, was a brilliant article by Matt Stoller. It was the best evaluation of seeing what Harris has done in any particular area. This is specifically, in the regulatory area. It was balanced. It stated the things that she did well, what her thinking may have been like, and also the various compromises she made, and what her political orientation has been, in the past. So if there's any basis to predict what she's going to do in the future in this area, then this article gives you the best basis for trying to evaluate that. And that's why I wanted to hit it here. Now, at the last minute, actually due to Lana Dell, she brought up what happened with Harris in 2020 with respect, to Medicare for All. And she wanted to know what was the position of Harris when it came to Medicare for All, back then. So there is a Washington Post article, and I didn't originally schedule this, but I'm going to go over it now. I'm not going to go over the whole thing because the essence of it can be given, in a very short time. What happened is during the debates, the political debates in 2020, she came out for Medicare for All. There was a question that was asked actually from the floor, the debate floor. And the question was, from the moderators, the question was, would people raise their hands, if they wanted, if they were in favor of a Medicare for All program that would abolish private health insurance, in the United States? And there were two people who raised their hands. The two people were Bernie Sanders, and Kamala Harris. And there was then a big furor over this. Was Harris really in favor of getting private health insurance out of the basics of Medicare for All, which would be covered by a Medicare for All bill? Because Bernie Sanders, of course, had written, a Medicare for All bill. And in that Medicare for All bill, all of the basic Medicare services, which is most health services, at all would not be able to be offered by private insurance companies if that bill passed. So basically, Harris was being asked whether she supported that bill and that particular concept, as well as all the other candidates on stage. She went along with Bernie on that. And she said that she was against it, but the reaction was so strongly against her raising her hand that following the debate, when she appeared on the Morning Joe program, first of all, the debate was on Friday night, but on Morning Joe on Thursday night, but on Morning Joe on Friday, I should say the candidate were asked with strong wording, would they outlaw private health insurance in favor of a government single payer plan? But appearing on Morning Joe on Friday, Harris suggested she had incorrectly heard the question as being about whether she personally would be willing to use a government plan instead of a private one. What NBC's Lester Holt asked was, many people watching at home have health insurance through their employer. Who here would abolish their private health insurance in favor of a government-run plan? And she raised her hand in favor of that, as did Bernie Sanders. She later said she would in fact preserve supplemental private insurance. Some journalists said on Twitter during the debate Thursday night they had understood Holt to be asking about the candidate's personal health care choices, but some critics questioned Harris's reversal, noting this is not the first time Harris or her campaign had clarified her remarks on private insurance after a live television performance. So, in other words, she was talking about both sides of her mouth on this. She wanted to be supporting Medicare for all. In 2017, Harris and several other Democratic senators running for president announced their support for Bernie Sanders' Medicare for all plan.
Isn't there concierge?
Yeah, but concierge medicine is completely outside that and is really a side issue at this point. I'll explain it later. Okay, what would happen, with respect to concierge plans. Okay, anyway, in 2017, Harris and several other Democratic senators running for president announced their support for Sanders' plan, which would move about 217 million Americans who receive their insurance through a private plan, as well as everyone else in the country, onto a single government insurance plan. The plan would outlaw all private health insurance coverage that is duplicative with this generous government plan, leaving only room for a handful of supplemental services such as cosmetic surgery. That is a good description by Jeff Stein of what the issue was. Quite a precise statement, much more precise than I was making and sort of roaming around the issue. As a technical matter, the Medicare for All bill would allow private insurers to sell supplemental policies for benefits not covered by the government plan. As a practical matter, this is a quote from Larry Levitt, who was then Senior Vice President for Health Reform at the Kaiser Family Foundation. Quote again from him, as a practical matter, the government plan covers such a comprehensive set of benefits that there would be virtually no role for private insurance, unquote. Okay, so that's all I'm going to read of this article, but basically that was the issue. She backed off supporting a plan that would greatly restrict and shrink to almost nothing the role of private health insurance in this area. But she was originally for that, but then she backed off it in the face of opposition. Oops. Okay, sorry, I thought for a minute that I mistakenly closed the stream. but I hadn't. Okay, mistakenly closed the stream. So, okay, let me click on that. Okay, so I'm done with screen sharing. So, okay, what I want to do is to summarize this. She has a record that's in and out. Okay, from a from a progressive point of view. She obviously has some thoughts, okay, that are progressive. There's not much evidence that these extend to foreign policy, but in the domestic policy area, there are certainly some thoughts and some tendencies to be a normie Democrat in this area and to be friendly to a lefty position, including when it comes to Medicare for all. So there's doubt what she would do as president. But against that particular doubt, as represented from her tendencies and from her record, there is the overwhelming role of big money in campaigns now. In other words, during the time of the record that we're talking about, the role of big money was getting more and more and more important through that time. But its importance in 2014 or 2012 or 2010 was nowhere near what it is today. Even its importance in 2018 was nowhere near what it is today. I mean, today, the big money is spending billions of dollars to get its way. Individual big money super PACs are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on campaigns. And we're seeing that all the time, and we're faced with that all the time. And as president, she's going to be faced with that. She's going to want to be raising money, gobs and gobs of money from the first day she gets into office. She's not going to want to be making the donors angry at her unless she starts off with a comprehensive plan to clip their wings and get money out of politics. Now, you all know that I have such a plan. If she got a landslide, okay, in this election, with the help of the big money interests, she could turn around and say she wants to get big money out of politics. And she could probably get people to vote to get the big money out of politics. And we know there is legislation that can be formulated to get the Supreme Court out of this and to get the big money out of politics. We know she could do that if she was so inclined, if she had that kind of idealism in her soul. Her record doesn't give great hope for that. I think that's what we have to conclude. Okay, now Lana and some others here tonight, of course, are very concerned about having a chance at getting a national Medicare for all bill. In order to do that, she would have to go against a huge amount of money which is dedicated to not having a Medicare for all bill. Is it possible to have a Medicare for all bill before you get the money out of politics? My view is that it is not possible. That if you want to have a national Medicare for all bill, and even a state level bill in many states, you have to overcome the influence of big money in politics, which means you have to get big money out of politics. Will Kamala Harris do that? I don't think so. Would Jill Stein do that if she became the president? Well, the problem is, even if she does become the president by some kind of miracle, Will she have the people in Congress who would support her in that? Okay, I seriously doubt that. What about a scenario where, somehow Bobby Kennedy gets into office? By the way, I should comment on that here before I go. It's very, very important. The fact that Harris was able to organize all of the Democratic delegates and squelch the opportunity for an open convention, which we won't have anymore. It's not in the cards anymore. That means there's a leader of the Democratic Party today, and it is Kamala Harris. She is the leader of the Democratic Party today. And since she is the leader of the Democratic Party today, everybody knows now who the candidate is going to be. They know it's going to be her. And the Democrats are going to start pumping her right now. They're already doing it. So I was hoping for a gap of 1 month where the Democrats did not have a central figure. And I was hoping maybe Bobby Kennedy would be able to gain huge ground. It now looks like that if we continue to see this surge in popularity for Harris and success in raising money and success in, just in running, we see the kind of panic flocking to her banner of the sort we saw in 2020 with Biden himself. That's going to undercut the efforts of Bobby Kennedy to gain ground. So if this continues in this way, he won't be a real competitive, alternative. There won't be a real possibility of a three-way race. But later on, the opportunity for a three-way race, that's what happened here. The Democrats, I think, have probably kind of squelched that unless Kamala's effort founders this month. But it has to founder this month. There has to be a development of unpopularity for her this month so that people start looking again to an alternative to Trump, because people will keep looking to an alternative to Trump. Trump is limited in his popularity probably to what he has now. It looks, however, as though Kamala is on a surge right now and maybe is not limited. If that's true, that takes the chance away from Bobby. However, if Kamala is stopped over the next 2-3 weeks in terms of surging popularity, and it looks like it's going to be a tight contest between she and Trump, and her negatives develop and get large, then maybe Bobby Kennedy still has a chance. Well, what's the importance of Bobby Kennedy having a chance? Well, there may be no importance. How many times in this program have I gone over the 6 or 7 things that are wrong with Bobby Kennedy and his particular positions? But he is different. He is an independent. He doesn't have to kowtow to the Democratic Party. He can sweep into office, on a popular wave. If he does, and if he doesn't owe anything to the Democratic Party, then he's in a position maybe to take over the Democratic Party and do the things that have to be done. But I can't offer much hope for that because there are these 7 things that are terribly wrong with his positions, including, of course, the big one, which is likely complicity in genocide. we don't know yet whether Harris is going to end up in that position, or whether she's going to change it or pressure it. That's going to be the interesting things that are going to go down. I mean, but that is one of the really most important issues. The idea that the United States is complicit in a genocide. We can't have that in the rest of the 21st century. I mean, that is intolerable. We cannot have that. We cannot live with that. We need to have something else. At least if Jill Stein was elected president, she would stop that crap. I don't know if she could get anything else done for us with the unfriendly Congress she's likely to have. But she at least could get that done. Well, I've taken now much too much time, and I need to go over to Dee's and help her out. But I thank you all for coming. I notice that lately my attendance has expanded considerably, and so thank you all for coming tonight. I will be back tomorrow night. I have a very important night here tomorrow night planned. Specifically, it was a very important appearance of Larry Wilkerson, okay, on the Dialogue Works program, okay, of Nima Alkershid. It was a YouTube video. It runs for 49 minutes and 2 seconds. What I want to do is I want to go over that video from 24 minutes and 41 seconds into the 49 minutes and 2 seconds. You break up the video, comment on it, okay, and analyze it tomorrow night. It's a tremendous video dealing with foreign policy, of course, with geopolitics, with what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on, okay, in Israel. It's tremendously honest. It's tremendously frank. Okay, it's tremendously passionate. Okay, and everybody should know about this and Larry's reasoning and the way he puts things in it. It's a terrific video. I'm going to devote the whole program to it tomorrow. So on that note, I am going to say good night, and I'll be over at Dee's very, very shortly. Thank you, Steve, for saying good night, everybody. Good night, everybody.